The room was dimly lit by the soft glow of the chandelier, casting long shadows across the polished wood of the floor. It was a private gathering at one of the most exclusive locations in Silicon Valley where the elite of the tech world often congregated to exchange ideas, philosophies, and insights. The guest list that evening was an eclectic mix of billionaires, innovators, philosophers, and scientists all gathered under the same roof, and yet, one person, or rather, one child, would steal the spotlight. Elon Musk, the visionary behind SpaceX, Tesla, and countless other technological marvels, stood in the corner of the room, observing the conversation swirling around him. His face was inscrutable, a calm and composed expression that had become a hallmark of his demeanor. Musk was known for his ambitious ventures into the future, from colonizing Mars to revolutionizing transportation, but tonight, he was less the center of attention than his youngest son, X-12, or simply X, as his family affectionately called him. X, though only 8 years old, had already become a curious phenomenon. His intelligence and his ability to ask probing questions about the nature of the universe were remarkable for his age. He had inherited his father's curiosity about technology and space, but there was something more to him, something deeper that many couldn't quite place. As the evening wore on, X, sitting quietly on his father's lap, listened intently as a group of tech moguls discussed the future of artificial intelligence. His eyes, wide with wonder, took in every word, yet there was an odd calmness about him. He wasn't fidgeting like many children would, but rather he seemed to be processing something far beyond the conversation at hand. A well-known tech CEO, David Tran, who had recently made headlines for his controversial views on technology and religion, noticed X's unusual composure. "You know," Tran said, half-jokingly, "I've seen many child prodigies in my life, but this one seems different. What do you think, Elon? Do you think he has a deeper understanding of life than we do?" Elon smiled, but there was a hint of something else in his eyes, as though he knew something others didn't. "He's got a very unique perspective," Elon replied, his voice quiet, almost reflective. The conversation shifted to a new topic, the intersection of technology and spirituality. It was a subject that intrigued many of the room's guests, including a philosopher named Grace Chin, who had written extensively about the future of human consciousness. Grace turned to Elon, her curiosity piqued. "Elon, you've often said that we're on the brink of something extraordinary with AI and space exploration. But what about the human soul? Do you think we're ready for that next step, the spiritual evolution, or are we just too focused on the physical world?" Before Elon could respond, X, who had been silently watching the exchange, spoke up. His voice, though young, was steady, with a clarity that caught everyone by surprise. "What if we're all already connected to something bigger than us?" he asked, looking up at his father before turning to face the group. A hush fell over the room. Everyone was taken aback by the simplicity and profundity of his question. David Tran, the tech CEO, raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, X?" he asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. X didn't answer immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts from a place far beyond his years. When he spoke again, his words were slow and deliberate, each syllable carrying a weight that felt almost out of place coming from such a young child. "I think we're all part of something that exists before time," X said, his gaze fixed on the chandelier above. "Maybe it's like the way a rocket leaves Earth, leaving behind the gravity that holds it in place to explore the stars. Maybe we're meant to leave behind the things that weigh us down here and discover the truth about who we really are." The room was silent. It wasn't just the words that left everyone stunned, but the intensity with which X spoke them. It was as though he wasn't merely parroting something he had overheard or learned from a book. No, this was something he had felt, something that resonated deeply within him. Elon's eyes softened as he looked down at his son. He wasn't surprised, not in the least. In fact, he had been waiting for X to express something like this. He knew that his son wasn't like other children. There was a rare wisdom about him that seemed to emerge out of nowhere. But Elon also knew that this moment would change everything. The tech giants in the room, the philosophers, the scientists, they all had their own understanding of the world, but X had just brought a new perspective to the table. One that transcended everything they had ever known. Grace Chen, the philosopher, was the first to break the silence. Her eyes were wide with astonishment. "X," she said softly, "what you just said, it's not something I expected to hear from a child, let alone someone so young. Can you tell us more? What do you think this connection to something bigger is? Is it a kind of divine intelligence?" X looked at her with the same calm expression. "Maybe it is," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe God is like the force that holds everything together. Like how you can't see the wind, but you know it's there because you can feel it. We don't always understand it, but it's what keeps everything moving. The room was absolutely still now. No one knew how to respond to such a statement. In a world where technology had become the new religion, where AI and data were worshipped with the same fervor as ancient gods, X had just introduced an idea that no one could fully comprehend. Yet it felt so profoundly right. Elon didn't speak for a moment. He simply stroked his son's hair gently, a silent acknowledgement of the wisdom he had just witnessed. The others in the room exchanged glances, each one of them processing what had just been said in their own way. Some were uncomfortable, others intrigued, and a few were even moved by the profundity of the words. It was clear that the conversation had just taken a turn. X had introduced a new dimension to their discussion, one that neither science nor technology could explain, and one that would leave everyone at that gathering rethinking their views on the world and perhaps on God. The room was still vibrating with the energy of X's words, and no one knew how to proceed. Grace-chan, the philosopher, shifted uncomfortably in her chair, clearly trying to grasp the deeper meaning behind the young boy's statement. She was known for her rational approach to life, her belief in human progress through science and reason, but X's words had thrown her off balance in a way she had never expected. Elon, she said after a long pause, her voice almost tentative, you must be incredibly proud of X. He speaks with a level of understanding that is beyond anything I've encountered before. She paused as if unsure of how to phrase her next question. But how do you explain this, his ability to articulate such profound ideas about God? Is it something you've taught him, or is this something else? Elon didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing. He had always known X was unique, but moments like these made him wonder if his son was seeing the world through a lens that was entirely different from anyone else's. He could only nod slowly, as if trying to reconcile his own thoughts with what had just unfolded. It's not something I've taught him, Elon finally replied, his voice quiet yet purposeful. It's something he's been feeling for a while. And when he speaks about these things, it feels real. Like it's not just his imagination, there's a deeper knowing behind it. The others in the room leaned in, intrigued and perplexed by Elon's words. The notion that a child could grasp such profound concepts about spirituality and the cosmos was not one they were prepared for. The world they operated in was grounded in logic, in code, in algorithms. But X's words transcended all of that. David Tran, the tech CEO who had initially joked about X's unique perspective, was the first to break the tension with a light laugh, trying to regain his composure. Well, maybe we're all looking in the wrong direction, he said with a wry smile. We've been so focused on creating the future with technology that we've forgotten about the deeper questions. Maybe X here is onto something none of us have considered. The room chuckled nervously, but the tension was still palpable. No one knew how to approach the topic of God, an idea so personal, so philosophical, yet something that had been largely abandoned in favor of progress, science, and innovation. It was almost as if they had forgotten that there was more to life than what could be quantified and measured. But X wasn't done. He turned to face his father, his innocent gaze unwavering. Dad, he said softly, do you think we're supposed to make the world a better place? Or is it more than that? Like, are we supposed to learn something from it all? Elon's heart skipped a beat. It was as if X had cut straight to the core of his own existential questions. The billionaire inventor had spent his life pushing the boundaries of what was possible, launching rockets into space, revolutionizing electric cars, and imagining a world that would be radically different from the one he inherited. But X's question, simple and pure, struck a chord deep within him. I think we are supposed to make the world better, Elon said, his voice filled with a rare vulnerability. But I also think that, in doing so, we're supposed to learn who we really are, what it means to be human. Maybe that's the real purpose of all this. We're not just building rockets and cars, we're building a better understanding of ourselves. There was a pause as everyone processed his words. It was clear that Elon had just spoken something he hadn't fully articulated before. He had spent so much of his life focused on technology and innovation that it seemed he had lost touch with the deeper, more philosophical side of existence. And now, in the quiet wisdom of his son's questions, he was being reminded of what truly mattered. X, of course, didn't say anything in response. He was simply watching, absorbing, processing. But his silence spoke volumes. It was as though he had already understood what Elon had just come to realize. As the evening continued, the discussion turned to other topics, but the impact of X's words lingered in the air. The tech moguls, the philosophers, and the innovators who had gathered there were all aware that something profound had just happened. They had come for an evening of casual conversation and networking, but what they had experienced was far beyond that. By the time the gathering began to wind down, many in the room had quietly excused themselves, lost in thought. No one wanted to admit it, but they had been forever changed by what had transpired. They had come seeking answers, but what they left with was a deeper sense of uncertainty. X had shown them that there was more to life than just technology. There was a connection to something greater, a force, a presence, a god that they had either forgotten or never truly understood. David Tran, who had earlier dismissed the idea with a joke, now found himself sitting in a quiet corner of the room, his eyes unfocused as he stared out the window. He couldn't help but replay X's words over and over in his mind. "Maybe we are all connected to something bigger," the boy had said. The words haunted him. Grace Chin, the philosopher, found herself reflecting on her own beliefs. Could it be that, in her pursuit of knowledge and reason, she had overlooked the possibility of something beyond the physical world? Could spirituality and technology coexist? As for Elon Musk, he was left with an unsettling sense of peace. X had spoken the truth, but the implications of that truth were vast. What would it mean for the future of humanity if more people, especially the next generation, began to think the way X did? Would technology and faith be able to exist side by side, or would one eventually overshadow the other? Days passed since the gathering, but the words X had spoken continued to reverberate in the minds of those present. Elon couldn't shake the feeling that something profound had shifted, not just for him, but for everyone who had been in that room. He had long been a man who trusted logic, science, and technology to answer the questions that had always plagued humanity. But X's words had introduced an entirely new dimension that he wasn't prepared for. Elon found himself reflecting on his own upbringing, his own beliefs or lack thereof. His parents, Errol and May Musk, had raised him in an environment that prized intellectual curiosity over traditional notions of spirituality. But here was X, a child with a mind that seemed to understand things far beyond his years. And in his innocence, X had revealed something that Elon himself had never truly considered. Late one evening, as Elon sat alone in his study, his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. He looked up to see X standing in the doorway, his eyes wide with that same knowing look. "Dad," X said, his voice soft but steady, "I want to tell you something." Elon, surprised by his son's sudden appearance, gestured for him to come in. "What's on your mind, buddy?" he asked, trying to mask the concern in his voice. X walked in and sat across from him, his legs dangling from the chair as he gazed up at his father. "You know how you always tell me that the future is about technology? That it's about building things that will help us go to space and save the Earth?" Elon nodded. He had spent countless hours teaching X about rockets, artificial intelligence, and the potential of humanity. But X's question had a different tone this time. It was not a typical child's query, but something deeper. "I do believe that," Elon replied carefully. "But I also think there's more to it than that. It's about creating a better world for everyone, right?" X nodded slowly as if contemplating Elon's words. "But what if the better world isn't just about rockets or cars or anything we can build? What if the better world is something that we can't see but can only feel?" Elon sat back in his chair, a frown creasing his forehead. X was speaking in riddles again, and yet, this time, the riddle felt significant. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to make sense of what X was saying. X paused, gathering his thoughts. What if all the things we're building, spaceships, cars, all of it, are just ways to escape from what's really important? What if the real answer is not out there in space, but in here? X placed his small hand over his heart. What if it's about connecting to something inside us, something that's already there? Elon felt a chill run down his spine. There it was again, the same sense of knowing that X had displayed at the gathering. It was as if his son could sense something that Elon couldn't put into words. Something transcendent. "I think you're right," Elon said quietly, more to himself than to X. "Maybe there's more to it than just technology. Maybe we're looking in the wrong direction." X smiled, his eyes twinkling. "I think so too. I think there's something bigger than all of us. Something that's been here all along." Elon's thoughts raced. Could it be that X was seeing something he wasn't? Was it possible that the future he had been so focused on, the future of technology and innovation, was missing a crucial piece? A piece that could change the course of human history? Just as he was about to speak, there was a knock on the door. It was May, Elon's mother, who had entered without waiting for a response. She had been following the conversations with her son from a distance, and she was clearly intrigued by X's musings. "Elon," she said, her voice laced with concern. "X has been saying things lately that I don't quite understand. It's like he's having these realizations about life, the universe, and God. Have you noticed?" Elon nodded, his expression serious. Yes, I have. I don't know what it means, but there's something profound about what he's saying. I don't think it's just imagination. May sat down beside them. I think you're right. There's something there, something deeper. But we've never really talked about spirituality in this family, have we? Elon shook his head. We've always been about science, reason, and the future. We've never really needed to. But now with X, he's raising questions that don't have easy answers. X, sitting silently between them, looked up at his parents with a wisdom far beyond his years. I think we need to learn to listen, he said softly. Maybe God isn't just about a religion or a belief. Maybe it's about something we all share, something inside us that connects us all. There was a long pause as both Elon and May considered their son's words. For the first time, the conversation turned inward, away from technology and towards something far more personal, far more human. Elon had spent his life designing rockets to reach the stars, but here was his son, pointing out that the answers might not lie in the stars at all. They might lie in the very souls of the people who looked to the stars for answers. It was May who broke the silence, her voice quiet but resolute. I think we're meant to learn from X. Maybe the future isn't just about rockets. Maybe it's about finding the connection that holds all of us together. Elon nodded, his mind racing with the possibilities. He had always believed that the future of humanity lay in reaching for the stars, in pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But now, with X's words echoing in his mind, he wondered if the true future of humanity lay not in escaping Earth, but in reconnecting with something far greater. It was an unsettling thought, one that he had never considered before. And yet, it felt like the most important realization of his life. The next few weeks passed in a blur for Elon. Every conversation, every decision seemed to carry a weight that he hadn't noticed before. X's words echoed in his mind, constantly reshaping the way he viewed the world. The child's simple yet profound observations had a ripple effect not only on Elon but on those around him. Elon's closest associates, the ones who had been a part of his most groundbreaking ventures, began to notice a shift in his demeanor. He seemed more introspective, less driven by the relentless pursuit of technological advancement, and more attuned to questions that had once seemed irrelevant. One afternoon, as Elon sat in a meeting with his senior engineers at SpaceX, he felt the weight of his son's words pressing on him. They were discussing a new project, an ambitious mission to send humans to Mars, the culmination of everything SpaceX had worked for. It was a project that had the potential to change the course of human history. But today, as Elon listened to the engineers pitch their ideas, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more important than Mars or any other planet, for that matter. Let's pause for a moment, Elon interrupted, his voice calm but firm. The engineers all looked at him, surprised by the interruption. I know we've been pushing toward Mars for years now, but I think we need to reconsider our approach. Maybe there's something we're missing. One of the engineers, Robert, raised an eyebrow. What do you mean, Elon? We've got the technology, the resources. This is the next step for humanity. I know, Elon said, leaning back in his chair. But I'm starting to think we've been too focused on reaching for the stars. We've neglected the very things that connect us here on Earth. Maybe we need to reframe our goal, not just colonize Mars, but create a future where we can all thrive together here where we are. The room was silent. The engineers exchanged uncertain glances. They had never heard Elon speak like this before. His entire life had been devoted to pushing humanity outward, to making space travel a reality. Now he was suggesting they rethink it all. I think X is onto something, Elon continued, his voice softer now. Maybe the real question is not about escaping to another planet, but about how we can heal our world. How we can connect to something deeper, something within ourselves. Something that transcends technology. Robert, who had always been a firm believer in the potential of space exploration, looked hesitant. But Elon, we've worked so hard for this. A mission to Mars is the next logical step. I know, Elon replied, his gaze distant. But maybe the next step is understanding what connects us all right here on Earth. What if the key to the future isn't found in the stars, but in rediscovering our humanity? The engineers didn't know how to respond. This wasn't the Elon Musk they knew. The Elon Musk they admired was driven by relentless ambition, the desire to conquer space, to break barriers. But now it seemed like he was questioning everything they had worked toward. That evening, Elon sat in his office looking out over the SpaceX campus. The bustling activity, the cutting-edge technology, the dreams of space travel, they all seemed suddenly distant. He thought about his conversation with X, his son's belief that there was something more than rockets, cars, and planets. Maybe there was something more to life than just progress and technology. At that moment, a message appeared on his phone, a text from X. It was simple, just one line, "Have you figured it out yet, Dad?" Elon smiled to himself, touched by the simplicity of the message. It was clear that X had already come to a realization that Elon was still trying to process. Perhaps it wasn't about figuring it all out in the traditional sense. Perhaps it was about embracing the uncertainty and allowing himself to be open to the mysteries of life. Later that evening, as Elon sat down to have dinner with X and May, the conversation turned to something even deeper. "I've been thinking," X began, his eyes wide with that same knowing look. "What if God isn't just in the sky or in a book? What if God is everywhere, like in the way people love each other, or how we care for the planet, or how we try to make things better?" Elon's heart skipped a beat. The same realization that had been quietly growing in him was now being voiced by his son. X had just put into words what Elon had been struggling to articulate. "You're right," Elon said, his voice thick with emotion. "Maybe God is in the things we do, in how we treat each other, in the choices we make. Maybe we're not meant to look for answers in the stars, but within ourselves." X smiled, clearly pleased that his father had come to the same conclusion. "I think that's it, Dad. We're supposed to look inside, not just up. The answers are all around us, in everything we do." As the evening came to a close, Elon couldn't help but feel a profound sense of peace. X had shown him a path he hadn't expected to find. A path that didn't involve conquering the stars, but understanding the depth of what it meant to be human, to love, to connect, and to make a difference in the world. The next morning, Elon called a meeting with his team at Tesla. He had something important to share with them, a vision that went beyond the cars they were building or the technology they were innovating. It was a vision for a future that embraced not only sustainability but also spiritual and human growth. "I've had a revelation," Elon began, addressing his engineers and designers. "We're not just building cars or spaceships or batteries. We're building a future. And that future has to include something deeper, something that connects all of us. We need to think about how our work can help people connect to each other and to something greater than themselves." The team listened attentively, sensing that something important was unfolding. Elon was not just talking about electric vehicles or space exploration anymore. He was talking about the future of humanity itself. "We're on the brink of something incredible," Elon continued. "But it's not just about technology. It's about the way we live, the way we love, and the way we care for each other. We can make the world better, not just with what we build, but with how we live." The room was silent as Elon finished speaking. It was clear that his team was processing what he had just said. They had been focused on innovation and progress, but now they were being asked to think about something more profound. As the meeting ended, Elon felt a renewed sense of purpose. The work ahead of him was still daunting, but he now knew that it was not just about creating a better world with technology, it was about creating a better world with compassion, understanding, and a shared connection to something greater. As weeks turned into months, Elon Musk's transformation became evident not only in his personal life but in the companies he led. SpaceX, Tesla, and all of his ventures began to take on a new direction, one that reflected the deeper insights he had gained through his conversations with X. His views on the future of humanity evolved into something far more holistic, blending technology with humanity's spiritual needs. The ideas X had shared, so simple yet so profound, had sparked a revolution in the way Elon approached his life's work. The decision to take this new path wasn't an easy one. There were skeptics, even within his own teams. People who had known Elon for years were initially baffled by his shift in focus. Some wondered if the man who had once been laser-focused on Mars and artificial intelligence had lost his edge. But as the months passed, the results of Elon's new vision became clear. The technology SpaceX was developing became more than just tools for space exploration. They became symbols of hope and unity. Tesla's innovations went beyond electric vehicles. The company began to focus on projects that integrated renewable energy solutions with community-building initiatives. Elon even proposed a new initiative to address global social issues, encouraging partnerships between tech companies and nonprofits aimed at addressing humanity's most pressing problems: poverty, inequality, and climate change. But perhaps the most groundbreaking of all was the public speech Elon gave at the unveiling of SpaceX's next major mission, a mission that would send humans to Mars. This time, however, the speech took a very different turn. Standing before a packed crowd of journalists, engineers, and curious onlookers, Elon Musk shared his vision for the future, but it was no longer just about the technology. Instead, he spoke of connection, not just among humans on Earth, but across the entire universe. "We're building rockets to reach the stars, yes," Elon said, his voice calm and steady, "but our true mission isn't just to explore space. Our true mission is to understand what binds us all together. It's about understanding that, regardless of the distance between us, we are all connected by something greater than ourselves. The audience was stunned. No one expected Elon Musk, the visionary entrepreneur, to speak like this. But his words resonated deeply. They were not just a call to explore new frontiers, but a call to understand the very essence of humanity. The room was silent except for the soft sound of people reflecting on his words. Elon continued, "Technology is powerful, but it is not the end goal. It's the tool we use to reach something deeper. Our journey to Mars is not just about sending people to another planet. It's about realizing that we can transcend our differences and unite for something greater than ourselves. Whether we're on Earth, on Mars, or anywhere in between, we are all connected." After the speech, Elon sat down with X and May in a quiet corner of the SpaceX complex. He looked at his son with pride. X had unknowingly given him the clarity he had needed all along. The child had opened his eyes to the fact that the true journey was not about leaving Earth, but about finding a deeper connection to humanity, to God, and to the universe itself. "I think you were right, X," Elon said, his voice filled with emotion. "The answers have been inside us all along. It's not about the stars. It's about what we choose to do here, on Earth, and how we treat each other." X smiled, his expression wise beyond his years. "I knew you get it, Dad. We don't need to go to Mars to find meaning. The meaning is here, in what we do, how we love, and how we care for each other." That evening, as the family sat together, Elon felt a sense of peace he had never experienced before. He had spent his life chasing after something external, building companies, conquering space, and shaping the future. But now he realized that the future wasn't just about what he could build. It was about how he could help build a world where love, connection, and understanding took center stage. And so Elon Musk's legacy began to change. No longer was he known solely for his ventures in space and technology, but for his shift in perspective, one that was deeply human and profoundly spiritual. His companies still pushed the boundaries of what was possible, but they did so with the understanding that technology was a tool, not an end in itself. The true mission was to create a world where people were connected by something more than just technology, where love, compassion, and unity took priority. The world took notice. Other tech giants, once solely focused on profit and innovation, began to follow suit, reevaluating their own missions. Governments, too, started to take the concept of interconnectedness more seriously, fostering international collaboration on social, environmental, and economic issues. Elon Musk had not just reached for the stars, he had found the meaning of life in the process. And it all started with the innocent yet profound words of his son, "What if it's about what's inside?" As for X, he continued to inspire his father as well as the world with his wisdom and purity of heart. He had sparked a revolution in Elon's thinking, one that would shape the future for generations to come. Elon Musk's son had said something about God that left everyone speechless, but it wasn't just the words, it was the life-changing impact they had on everyone who heard them. In the end, it wasn't about space, technology, or even the future, it was about love, connection, and the realization that we are all part of something far greater than ourselves.